chess aficionados, while looking to find the moment where Spassky applauded Bobby Fischer during the match between the two, between what was considered the Cold War era game of the century. Why? Because Cold War was between the Russian Empire there, Soviet Union, and the United States of America. Between what was considered communism as an ideology and democracy. Well, I came upon this really very interesting put together video. I'll put you the link to it. Let's watch it. It's very important to know some history, especially the history of chess. And this was the time where there was nuclear threats very, quite high. And so this was it was a pressure cooker. Like the one man, Bobby Fischer, defending democracy. And even though he was born in the United States, his mother was, I believe, Polish, Jewish, and became a doctor. I think spoke 7 languages, but I think she had some tendencies for beliefs in the communistic way, which, by the way, is something that has to be thought about, because communism is atheism. It's not the belief of God. So anyway, let's watch this video. I'll put a link to it and see what you think.
What would your ultimate aim be?
Well, I'd like to be a world champion and keep it for maybe 20 years or so.
20 years.
Fischer is to chess what Muhammad Ali is to boxing.
Will Fischer beat the Russians?
Yes, Fischer will beat the Russians.
You honestly think that you probably are the world's greatest chess player?
Right.
Yeah.
In the 18-month period, in the run-up to his challenge to Boris Spassky, Fischer had beaten and in some cases destroyed some of the best Soviet players.
Fischer was wiping away his opposition like flies. He went on a 20-game winning streak, which was unheard of in championship chess.
Bobby Fischer was exciting not only the chess world, but the world.
There's trouble in Northern Ireland. Henry Kissinger is shuttling to and from Vietnam. And against that competition, the chess dominates.
In Moscow today, the Soviet Chess Federation called an angry news conference to denounce Bobby Fischer.
General Motors recalls 500,000 Chevrolet Vegas, and
Bobby Fischer, true to his recent erratic behavior,
finished off Tigran Petrosyan of the Soviet Union, a former world champion. It was the best news story today. The victory gave Fischer the right to play the world's champion, Boris Spassky, another Russian, next spring.
We all had hopes. We all wanted him to be world chess champion.
The one person he was yet to beat was Boris Spassky.
You said it's your title the Russians are holding. You don't like the Russians.
The Russians have cheated at chess. They found every way to avoid me, to avoid giving me a chance for a match. And they've slandered my name. And, they're dead afraid of me. They have been for years. That's the true story.
And now you're going to get them?
Well, now I'm going to try to get them.
The Soviets had been winning these tournaments, and I thought it would be good for America, for democracy, to have an American winner.
The stakes really couldn't be much higher politically, popularly in people's minds. These were two enemies who were not fighting a real war, but were trying to outdo one another strategically all the time.
We will not tolerate being pushed around.
We have a design and the material assets to deal with the Soviet Union.
Как никогда прочны международные позиции Советского Союза.
This little thing with me and Spassky, I'll tell you, with the bombs, having it out of the board.
one of the superpowers, the Soviet Union, had made chess its national sport. They had spent unlimited amounts of money. They had hundreds of grandmasters. They won every tournament, every chess Olympiad.
The National Chess Federation wants word by tomorrow morning from Fischer on whether he's agreeable to 24 games in Iceland, and Fischer is taking his time answering.
There was a real possibility that the match wouldn't take place. One has to remember with Fischer that he dropped out of tournaments before.
This was probably the most stressful week of my life.
Are you Dr. Sadie?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Fischer made it clear that he would try to go to Iceland tonight. Did he express these thoughts to you?
Made it clear to whom?
We had talked to a few people, and they had the impression he was going.
Everybody can have impressions, but the only person who knows what Bobby Fischer is going to do is Bobby Fischer. That's about all I really want to say.
I see.
I want you to all keep cool. At one point during his stay at our home, he simply said, "It's over. I'm not going."
Still no sign of Bobby Fischer. Today, the International Chess Federation postponed by 48 hours the start of the match, but it said if Fischer is not in Iceland by noon on Tuesday, he will be disqualified.
Mr. Johnson, if I may ask, are you worried?
No.
And I just wondered if you've ever seen Mr. Fischer, if you have any proof that he actually exists.
That's a good question. Yes, I think, gentlemen, we can agree on the point that Mr. Fischer exists.
We were losing the whole thing. We had to get Fischer to come to Iceland. The Soviet Union had the feeling that the world chess champion was humiliated. They wanted to call Spassky back to the Soviet Union. Boris said to me, "This is a very severe situation. You have to solve this on a higher level."
Finally, Bobby showed up in Iceland. Now, is he going to really play for the World Championship?
It's been a long road for Fischer to this game, and it'll be a long match at the end of that road. Both he and Spassky have to play 24 games. The match could last up to 2 months. Each game runs to 5 hours. The most intellectually exhausting battle known to the mind of man. The World Chess Championship.
We had the Icelandic government, the Icelandic president, the ambassador of the Soviet Union, the ambassador of the United States, and many foreign guests. The theater was full.
Regularly scheduled programs will not be seen at this time, so we may bring you the following sports special.
ABC Sports presents the World Chess Championship match between Boris Spassky, the defending champion from the Soviet Union, and 29-year-old Bobby Fischer, the challenger from the United States.
It was the Super Bowl. The audiences were gigantic. People stayed home from work.
People were lining up in front of TV sets in department stores. There were chess groupies.
On Times Square, they were showing the game live. It was that important.
Let's find out from you, Larry, if there are any late-breaking developments.
They might fuss around with the chess pieces and the size of the board and the lighting, but I'm fairly confident the match will start on time.
Boris Spassky, the world chess champion, was there with all his assistants, but Fischer was not here.
The clock has now been started. It was officially 5 o'clock in Reykjavik. Spassky is obviously anxious about the whereabouts of Mr. Fischer.
Bobby was nowhere to be seen, and all of us despaired.
If Fischer doesn't show up, By the time 1 hour has elapsed, he forfeits the game automatically. Oh, there he goes now. He's just played 1, pawn to queen 4.
You saw Spassky make his move, then he touched his clock, which turns his clock off, but turns his opponent's clock on. So Fischer's time is now ticking.
There was no certainty that even though this was the biggest match of his life, he would actually show up.
See, many people think that his antics were designed to upset Spassky, to discombobulate Spassky, which they did, but I don't think that was their intent.
I don't think any of this was directed against Spassky. It was his own inner demons that he was fighting.
Well, Spassky is waiting.
Right, and waiting and wondering whether Bobby will show or not show. And there's absolutely dead silence in the hall.
Spassky is pacing, he's nervous, and...
Wait, here comes Fischer, coming on the stage saying that he was caught in traffic. And I think Spassky is visibly relieved.
And also perhaps pained.
It didn't look like this match would happen, but finally it happened. And it was phenomenal.
How do you spell relief, okay?
Now, for the first time, we're looking at Bobby Fischer, the man that 8 times has won the United States Open Championship.
I remember saying on TV at one point during the match, I said, you know, we're really lucky to be alive at this moment when Bobby Fischer's playing Boris Spassky.
There's the first move, 1 knight, king, bishop, 3. Very non-committal.
Now watch, see Fischer turn around here?
Yeah.
He's checking to see that camera location. And now he goes over to protest those cameras being there.
There's Lothar Schmidt in the background.
Bobby said, I feel disturbed. I cannot have that, please.
Spassky remains serene and imperturbable throughout all this.
The first game started out with some minor psychological games in the opening, but then it calmed down, and the position that we reached after 28 moves seemed like a complete draw. It seemed like they're going to agree to a draw shortly and move on to the next game.
All the pieces were traded. They got into an endgame. Each side had a bishop and a bunch of pawns.
It was very easy. It was a dead draw. The position reached a very even position, virtually symmetrical.
And Fischer went haywire. He did something that hardly anyone would do except a rank amateur. He grabbed a pawn, allowing his bishop to be trapped.
He made a colossal beginner's blunder. He took a pawn which allowed Spassky to trap his bishop. We couldn't believe it.
This looks like an error, but this is Fischer playing the move. There must be more to it than that. There must be an explanation. There must be some deep combination that we've missed.
И думал, что в крайнем случае он все же ничьей добивается. Но он хотел показать Спасскому, что он готов с ним бороться. Вот и он пошел на эту борьбу. Но Фишер ошибся.
Bobby saw 6 moves ahead here. When he made the move, he just didn't see 7 moves ahead. White can interpolate a move. He can play bishop to queen too. Notice that cuts off the escape square. And then all that White has to do on the next move is play king to knight 2, and the bishop is lost.
That was the shot heard around the world.
It was inexplicable. I still don't know how that happened.
Spassky won the first game.
You had to get 12.5 points. The best of 24. A win is 1, a loss is 0, and a draw is 1/2.
He had an agreement that the cameras be quiet, and Bobby said they aren't quiet, and they disturb me.
You have to start in time. If a player is not present, you have, as the arbiter, press his clock.
Fischer had been known to quit matches over trivia, so we were afraid that he would just, run back home and it would be the end of it.
Bobby did not show up. I had, as the arbiter, to forfeit him, and for a moment I thought, did I make the right decision? Was it fair? Was it correct? But it was necessary. There was no other way. This night I remember that I have been woken up by tears in my eyes, that I, as an arbiter, had to destroy a genius.
He was now trailing 2-0. It's very hard to make that up in a 24-game match.
Half the world thought that's it. The match is over, he'll never come back. Why would he even bother trying, to come back from such a difficult situation?
Fischer said, well, I'll continue, but the third game has got to be away from the auditorium, inside a sealed room. It was a little ping pong room in the back of the stage. And Spassky agreed.
You can't change the location without both sides' permission once a match has started.
He could have claimed the match on a forfeit. He didn't have to play in that packed room. If he hadn't, Fischer would have not played, and the match would not have continued.
Boris automatically made his first move.
The game could still be watched by a closed-circuit TV camera.
The audience was in the hall and they could follow the game move by move.
In Game 3, Bobby played an opening, a defense he had never played before, the Benoni, which means son of sorrow. It is so risky, so fraught with danger, that whenever you play that, you're simply saying, we're not going to make a draw. This is win or lose. This is a fight to the death.
Bobby moved his knight to the edge of the board.
There's a saying in chess, Ein Springer am Rand bringt Kummer and Schand. A knight on the side I will not abide. It was against principle.
It's not considered a good idea because the center of the board typically is the most important battleground, and that's where we want to position our pieces, or at least in a way that our pieces attack the middle of the board.
Not only did he move the knight to the side of the board, but it also could have been captured by a bishop, and he would have had a very ugly-looking double pawn way over on the side of the board, which it was very unaesthetic, let's say.
Spassky is literally sitting on the edge of his chair. There should be a little more relaxed than Spassky. Spassky is very tense.
More tense than you've seen him?
Yes. I think he feels that he's
He maybe what?
maybe losing the game.
I see.
Spassky obviously hadn't spent that much time studying this kind of position because the move or the idea was relatively rare. So that put already Spassky in a difficult psychological position.
Spassky did not find the best continuation and was consistently outplayed until Fischer won his first game of his life against Spassky. He was on the scoreboard.
What do you think of Bobby Fischer?
I like him. I like his style.
Are you following the game?
Yes, I have. American chess players are behind Bobby 100%, and they're all anxious to see him get in there and win the championship.
Do you think that Fischer will win for the first time over the Russian champion?
I think Fischer will win because he's playing for $200,000. But if Spassky wins, most of the money will go to the Russian government.
People sat in bars betting on what the next move is going to be, the way they bet on whether it's going to be a hit in a baseball game. That's when chess really exploded.
Move me on to any black square. Use me anytime.
Tell me what turns you on about chess.
What?
Do you hope to be as good as Bobby Fischer one day?
Well, I'd hope to, but I doubt if I would be.
Game 6 is very celebrated. It is probably the most reprinted game of the entire match. It was like a symphony of placid beauty.
Right on the first move, Bobby Fischer came up with a major surprise to the entire world. He almost always starts the game with moving the pawn in front of his king 2 pawns up with e4.
Что он был очень постоянен. Ел манную кашу и яйцо в смятку и чашку кофе, то он продолжал это в течение многих лет. То он из турнира в турнир продолжал это играть.
And in this game, everybody's shocked. He started with the English opening by playing c4. Spassky's preparation was out the window. I'm sure he prepared for many things, but not this.
Fischer did not play his usual game. He played a different kind of game, a placid, positional, slowly building up game where he deprived Spassky of mobility, pushed him back where his pieces could not do anything.
It was just a beautiful game. I don't know what more can be said about it. It's just a model of precision.
It was such a beautiful game that when the crowd applauded at the end of the game, Spassky himself stood up and applauded Fischer.
On his way back to the hotel, Fischer said, "Did you see what Spassky did?" He said, "That's a sportsman. He's a real sportsman."
Game 21 reached move 40, the move at which the game was adjourned for the two players to go and study it.
This is NBC Nightly News, Friday, September 1st.
Good evening. We'll have more on the developments in the Watergate bugging case. We'll hear George McGovern talking about tightening up his campaign organization, and we'll have a look at the new unemployment figures. And first, Bobby Fischer. Today was the day when Fischer and the Russian champion, Boris Spassky, were to have finished the 21st game of the World Championship, a game they started yesterday. But Spassky, after what must have been an agonizing night spent analyzing his position, didn't even show up to play.
I was going to photograph Spassky in the morning. He came straight over to me, shook my hand and said, "There is another world champion his name was Robert James Fischer. I went back to the loft leader, to Bobby's room, and I told him Spassky just retired. And I want to be the first to congratulate you.
How you feel, babe? Tell us how you feel, man. You said you were going away. Listen, will you talk to us, Bobby? Bobby, roll with it there.
How did it feel? You say, oh, this is to the mayor, or did you ever thought of anything like that?
No, I never, thought this was going to happen. Chess, I just hope this keeps on.
I just had a premonition that something awful was going to happen to him. I didn't know what it would be, but I didn't feel good about it.
One of Fischer's problems was that after the match, he was supposedly better known by the population of the world than anyone except for Jesus Christ. And he was a guy who treasured his privacy. He had a problem.
The entire world knows the name Bobby Fischer by now.
Was it a letdown after it was all over, Bobby? I mean, it was, well, there must have been a tremendous...
It was. I woke up the day after the thing was over, and I just felt different, like something had been taken out of me.
If you look throughout history, there have been a disproportionate number of extremely talented chess players who've also had serious psychological issues.
You are putting yourself in a world that is infinite. It's abstract. You are, in essence, reshaping your mind. If you understand that in the first move of a chess game, each player has 20 possible moves. If you multiply it by 20, that means there are 400 different possible chess positions after the first move.
The tree becomes with a lot of branches, that you start with one move, and on that one move there are several options. Then all of a sudden it becomes a jungle.
The number of all positions that theoretically can occur in the game of chess is something like 10 with 45 zeros. It's like the number of atoms in the solar system.
You're trying to anticipate what your opponent might do, and you don't know what he might do, so you're thinking of all the different possibilities. A good chess player is paranoid on the board, but then if you take that paranoia to real life, it doesn't play so well. You end up seeing your real world according to the confines of chess.
He died from a psychiatric illness. He did not want to accept treatment for benign prostatic hypertrophy.
He refused dialysis, I understand. Probably could have prolonged his life if he'd taken it. Reportedly, Fischer's last words were, "Nothing is so healing as the human touch."
The former world champion of chess, Bobby Fischer, has died. His career reached its height during matches with his nemesis, Boris Spassky, back in 1972.
just his games. That's his monument. His games.
If you love an art, let's say you love painting, imagine if Picasso had died after only 5 years of work, and all the rest of his works had never appeared. This was a tragedy for the whole chess world.
He did it all by himself. He penetrated the secrets of chess in this shabby Brooklyn apartment. He was the best player who ever lived.
Bobby Fischer, sound roll 3. Right. Bobby, you've been playing this game since you were 6 years old, and playing it very seriously shortly after the age of 6. Did all this concentration to the exclusion of other activities, did this bother you? Do you think this deprived you of anything growing up?
Maybe, yeah, to some extent, yeah.
Like what?
Well, it would have been better, a little more balanced, yeah. Maybe, a little more rounded, but what can you do?
So, chess aficionados, what are your thoughts? He paid a very heavy price. He played for hours and studied for hours. There was no chess engine at the time. You had books and magazines. And I suggest that you follow up with Pawn Sacrifice, another movie that was made about his life that goes deeper into all he had to face. But we shall really never know. And we cannot judge a person. He gave a lot to this game. He dedicated his whole life to it. I don't believe he had children or a wife. And that causes a lot of instability if you don't have that capacity, because you focus so much. Sometimes geniuses do not see the world the same way. So we should accept and not judge people. And what did you think? Was this well put together, or do you want to add something? I want to add something. As you can see by my accent, I've been on both sides of a story. I lived under a communism regime, not the Soviet Union though, for the first few years of my life, so I remember as a child what that was like. It was not a fun experience. You can feel the pressure on the people, the rations, the long lines for even food. Chocolate was rationed for kids. My goodness, chocolate. So next time you go to a store in the United States, for example, and you can just get a Tic Tac without a problem, think about what voting means and how important it is to vote for people that uphold democracy. Sadly, though, even though he won, he did not accept any sponsorships. That's where you get the millions from different companies and corporate people that sign you up with those hefty contracts. He did not accept those. And then Spassky, on the other hand, if he had forfeited, which was his right, guess what? He would have not gotten the prize money. So that's a little caveat to think. Humans are going to be the same under no matter what kind of ideologies they live under. And so, adieu. And his grave is in Iceland, near Reykjavik, in a smaller town. Nothing fancy. But again, just like kings and queens and pawns, we all go back into the sack. And we're all the same in the end. From dust to dust we go. Thanks for watching. Au revoir.